Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Modern Mobile Oilfield. As always, it is myself, Tavis, and really, we do have a YouTube channel, so not only are you missing out on a good-looking young man in a turtleneck, but all vanity aside, there's also great visuals. We highlight the best of Jeffrey's information and quotes, and really consider going through there. It's going to be a much more entertaining learning experience for you if you search Rare Petro Podcast on YouTube.com or simply the Modern Mobile Oilfield. But, of course, this is the Modern Mobile Oilfield, where we will expand on ideas from Jeffrey's book, Bits, Bytes, and Barrels. And this is actually the last conventional episode we're recording, but we've only scratched about 20% of this book. There's so much more for you to learn, so I'll try not to keep our guests waiting anymore. Jeffrey, a little cold here in Colorado today. How are you doing in Canada?
Not too bad, though. The cold weather, the Arctic weather is sweeping across the northern part of the country. Just looking out my window here, I can see snow in the hills. I'm kind of hoping the bears have gone into hibernation so I can get the bird feeder out. But
yeah, that would be nice. But today's episode is actually a little bit of a two-parter. We've got gamification and 3D printing. So let's knock the tough one out of the way. What is gamification? I mean, using the prefix game, would I be right to assume that maybe it is related to a game, gaming?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The concept of gamification has come from the gaming industry. The video gaming industry is enormous. It's not something that the industrial world pays too much attention to, but if you're a gamer, the video games are a big deal. New launches generate billions of dollars in revenue for game publishers. But so the sorts of things that you see in online games coming to industrial applications, competition, things like repetition, aiming for and helping to improve someone's accuracy. So if you're in a video game and you're shooting something, then what the game teaches you to do is to become far more accurate in shooting. Well, why not bring that kind of concept into an industrial application to drive towards what industrialists would aim for, which is execution excellence, regardless of whether it's a video game or controlling a piece of equipment. And the sorts of things that you see in video games, which have come to industry, point scoring, rewards and prizes, bonuses, badges that you can get, personalization. We all love to personalize our profiles on LinkedIn. That's a gamification move by LinkedIn. Competition, super realism. And there's lots of different kinds of games, simulations, training games, strategy games, puzzle games. The list goes on and on and on in terms of what the game industry has done. And then the question then is, how do you bring that into industrial world?
Mm-hmm. So definitely, I don't think not everyone in the audience is a gamer, and they might be on LinkedIn. Hopefully they'd be shooting themselves in the foot if they weren't, but are there other examples that we might be familiar with maybe commercial or industrial use?
Well, I would actually like to touch on LinkedIn because the vast majority of professionals now, certainly across North America, will have a LinkedIn profile. It's just one of those things. But hidden inside LinkedIn are all kinds of gamification techniques that LinkedIn is using to create the right kind of platform. Some of you who, if you're editing your profile, you'll notice on the side of your dashboard this little announcement that says, you are becoming an all-star, your all-star profile. That's a gamification technique. That's giving you a subtle reward to tell you how great you are and moving you up the ladder of accomplishment on the platform. They're constantly asking you to update your profile, telling you how many people are following you, encouraging you to connect. Somebody has mentioned you in a post. Normally, when someone is calling attention to you, that releases a little chemical in your brain called dopamine. It's called the pleasure chemical, and it makes you feel good about yourself and feel good about your situation. So LinkedIn is using all of these sort of subtle techniques to really help encourage that repetition, accuracy. Your data on LinkedIn is very accurate. I encourage you to visit the site over and over and over again all day long. The like buttons, if you see a like button, that's a game technique. It's a way you signal your involvement in your community. And so you don't have to look too far to find examples of this that we're all very, very comfortable now using as just with LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. And then definitely it is in LinkedIn, and there's those rewards. I like to get that little chemical dump when I put up a podcast and I see people interact with it. But outside of that, in our remote COVID world, are there maybe other examples there?
Well, an interesting one that came out from Apple quite when the COVID was announced was the hand washing app on your iWatch. If you, those of you who have an Apple Watch, and this might be on some other watch technologies too. Apple's watch can detect when your hands are moving the way you would customarily move to wash your hands. So you're rubbing them together underwater in this sort of motion. The app immediately kicks in, and then it gives you a little jingle, a little positive jingle sound that says, "Hey, congratulations, you've washed your hands for 15 seconds."
Oh,
We never needed this before, but suddenly people are washing their hands and going, "Hey, I'm going to get the little jingle here," and so people are washing their hands more. That's a very subtle kind of example in the COVID world. Specifically related to hand washing. But another example certainly is in training. The ability to train people now no longer needs to or should even take place in a kind of very personal setting because COVID is so transmittable through aerosols. So training is now shifting over to be much more of a virtual online experience. And that's and built into many training systems are lots of gamification tools, rewarding your behavior, congratulating you when you succeed, moving you up a level, gone from amateur to competent, proficient, and then expert, and then guru status. You know, these are all game techniques to encourage behaviors.
Oh, yeah, of course. And then clearly this was born out of the gaming industry, but this is the modern mobile oil field. So how long and to what extent has gamification actually been utilized within the oil and gas sector?
I personally have only been aware of gamification techniques being applied in oil and gas over the past 4 to 5 years. And the earliest indications or instances I saw of this were at a large oil company in Calgary, Suncor, who had pulled all kinds of data sets from all across the company into what are called a data lake, which is just a large repository of data. And employees would kind of tap into this data lake to get information they were interested in. And those data sets that were proven to be very reliable, accurate, complete, on timely, the employees would just press a like button. And then over time, those data sets, when you went searching, those data sets would bubble up to the top. That's a kind of gamification application in a large industrial concern. But when you look at across oil and gas, it's still very much a nascent technology. We're still far away from the full potential for gamification.
Yeah, far away today, but say 10, 20 years down the road, what areas stand to benefit the most, the greatest gains?
Well, the fastest place of application is clearly in the training world because of the pandemic is driving us to a much more of a virtual existence and virtual work. And training systems delivered through a virtual world immediately lend themselves to gamification techniques and positivity. I saw an example in Australia while I was living and working there in the capital industry. The specific use case was a construction company had taken an asset operator, I should say, the owner operator of this asset happened to be a plant facility of some kind, water treatment, I believe, took the Primavera P6 plan, which had been prepared by the engineering company, put it into a gaming engine, which is the kind of thing you can just buy if you're building a video game. People don't build these engines from scratch anymore. You just buy that technology. Well, they took the P6 plan and dropped it into the video game engine and then played the capital plan like it was a video game. And what they were able to show was how the video, by repeatedly playing the video of the capital plan, the engineers were able to find ways to improve the capital execution by as much as 10%. So on a $4 billion project, imagine saving $400 million out of your capital spend by taking your existing, you've already built the P6 plan, you're dropping it into a video engine, and now you're just playing the game to see how your capital program executes. $400 million. The payback is enormous. Other places where there is a significant potential use case would be in logistics, optimization of logistics, and where there is ample data, you could even build strategy games that involve your actual company. This was done by Husky in Calgary. They took a number of data sets that related to the execution, how the business operated, and they created a little strategy game that taught the employees how the business actually worked. So there's lots of potential use cases out there.
All right. And then is there a ceiling for the potential gains from this, or is it really just as much as we can dream at this point because it's so young?
It's still very young, and so really I don't really know where the upside is, but I can, I mean, just the capital alone, if you could take 10% out of available capital spend
Yeah,
just by that single action of just putting the construction plan into the tool set, what could you do if you brought these technologies across the full measure of the industry?
definitely.
Lots
And
of
then,
lots of upside.
considering maybe episodes we've had in the past, is there another technology that take gamification, pair it well with the other tech to make something beautiful, or is it all kind of
Well,
up in
I
the air
mean,
still?
I provided one example already, which was you take the concept of big data or a data lake and large data repositories in the cloud, and you use gamification to promote or identify the best possible use cases. But at the same time, those organizations who have built a digital version of a physical asset or a supply chain, a digital twin, if you like, which we have discussed. Imagine applying gamification techniques to teaching the employees how the actual business works, but using the digital version of the business, playing with many, many different scenarios as an example. Shell, who are building a large LNG plant in Canada, have run the actual operation of the plant under millions of different scenarios so that they can make sure that the plant will run under all possible conditions. Well, that digital version of that plant suddenly becomes a training platform.
Mhm.
It's because if you've got all the data and the assets, why not? Another use case is to strap. We did this in our last episode. Was what I call digital reality, where you have a little you're wearing a headset which presenting a virtual world to your eyes through a screen. That could easily become an example of combining these two technologies, a digital twin, digital reality, to create an immersive training platform for employees to learn. And places where that could be applied is in search and rescue. Trials that people might be running in a complex plant. If there's a disaster, how are you going to get an injured worker out? You can do all of that in this simulation or virtual world as a way of improving the employees' understanding of that facility and how it works.
Yeah. And then it's still definitely very young, like we've mentioned before, but the investment cost, is it kind of framed at this point, or is it wildly insignificant? What does it stack up compared to the rest of the?
Well, it's very much software related. So the costs themselves are actually very, very incremental. There's no, to my knowledge, aside of it, unless there was the digital reality tools being applied, I don't know of a capital cost that you would expend on this. Most gamification techniques are built for video games, which are by themselves originally software. So it's really in relative terms, very, very low cost.
Mhm. So can gamification actually help with back office tasks or making personnel even more efficient? I imagine it's probably not as simple as just implementing a leaderboard wherever you'd like to see improvements.
Well, actually, there's a very good use case in the back office is just employee suggestions for how to improve the business.
Hmm.
You could gamify a suggestion box, for instance, by having employees vote on the best suggestion, and to highlight or help take a specific suggestion that's come into the suggestion box to improve its applicability or improve its utility because other employees are building on it, and you reward that behavior with like buttons and the like. That's a way that you could absolutely gamify a very traditional, very standard back office process.
Hmm. And then what factors will need specific attention when an organization does choose to implement gamification into their everyday workflow?
Well, as I see it, the biggest issue with gamification tools is that they can feel, to an employee, manipulative. So in the same way that video games do not apply or do not resonate with all people, these kind of gamification techniques do have the potential to turn off some of your employees. So they have to be done with quite a bit of discretion and care. You don't do this without some considerable thought. For example, what gets rewarded gets done, and so if you're rewarding certain kinds of behaviors which have certain kind of negative outcomes, you might create problems in your business model. And a good example of this is competition. The right competition in oil and gas is not between operations and finance. It should be between the oil company and the other oil companies.
Yep.
But if you put the wrong kind of measures and game tools in place, you could absolutely create conflict between different parts of your business, which could be proved to be very, very unhealthy. So you have to be have to act with discretion here.
Yeah. And then how does a company even go about deciding if they want to implement this? Because that 10% savings before, that's pretty convincing. Is there any other value?
Well, it's the value is as I say, it's such a novel and new area. It's hard to really say definitively that there is this absolute value that's lurking out there. But these, as I say, these early use cases prove that, there can be some not inconsiderable amounts of value at stake. I'll use another example related to the first one where I sketched out how you take the P6 plan, you jump it into your game engine, and then you play it and see how if you can improve the plan.
Mm.
Another use case is to take the actuals, like what was actually done on that project, and put that into the same game engine and play it. And what that reveals is all of the screw ups that took place on the project. Cranes moving around where there's nothing for them to lift, or bridges being erected, and suddenly that the intersection where you need to do your work suddenly is blocked off, and you didn't get the permits on time. And so companies in Australia, as an example, are using this kind of technique to revisit all of their billings to make sure that the puts and takes on the capital projects are fairly allocated. Who is at fault? And so so what's the value there? Well, it might mean the difference between making and breaking a capital project. I mean, so it's hard to really put a dollar amount on it, but the early evidence is very compelling for game techniques.
Mm-hmm. And then how can management ensure that if gamification is implemented or something is gamified, that it isn't used too much, isn't wasted? Because I can see myself as a young drilling engineer, and my boss goes, well, Killian, you spent 20 hours on the drilling simulator this week. And, well, I was going for the high score. How do you balance that?
Well, this is in fact one of those questions that doesn't get asked nearly enough, and the reason for that is that many of these game techniques are driving to in the gamification world, the game world, video game world, is to drive rapid uptake. One of our earlier podcasts, we talked about the two laws of digital. So law number one is Moore's law of exponential change, either cost or capability or what have you. But it's Metcalfe's law, which is the second driver. Metcalfe's law says that the value of a network is equal to n squared. And if a network is where n is the number of nodes on your network with the number of users, so if you're a person and you're using one of these games, your value to the network is n squared. And if you're a guru on that network, you're going to be the center of an awful lot of positive attention. And so you're quite right. Employees might, if the games are set up that way, employees will devote a whole lot of time and energy accumulating badges and likes and so forth. But where's the real value? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I say these tools have to be introduced with discretion and care, so that you get the outcome you want. Not game players, but people who are applying the lessons of the game in the real world. And that does take some management discretion to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. And then how can individuals better learn how to utilize this technology, or should students and young professionals really not dedicate any energy to this? Because it kind of sounds like it might come to them.
I think it's going to come to people in the industry as opposed to people in the industry going and looking for it, with the exception of those individuals who are designing or redesigning business processes, leveraging digital or other new technologies. They should be putting into their project where and how can we apply some of these modern ideas from the world of video games to our industrial process to promote execution excellence, high levels of repetition, care and attention to detail, to really drive these processes to be executed with excellence. That's the question managers should be asking, and they should be asking, what's the role of game techniques to achieve that outcome?
Yeah, I was just about to ask about managers too, because I can certainly see one going, well, hell no, I'm not implementing a video game.
Yeah, but precisely. If you can imagine the conversation to happen in the manager's office, where the young engineer says, "Hey, I think if we put a like button on this application, it'll promote." The manager going, "What? I don't really care whether you like it or not. I just want you to do it." And that attitude misses the whole point. And so that's where there is a need for the managers to be open-minded and embrace some of these concepts to see how they can make a big difference in industry.
And I think that's about all the questions I have on that topic. Have you got anything else?
No, I'm a big fan in game tools and techniques. They're all around us. It's all extremely, in many cases, extremely subtle. But game and gamification is so critical now to accelerating adoption rates. A 4-star, my 4-star rating. That's a game technique.
Yep.
And who doesn't like to get 4 stars? Right, so it's all around us. It's absolutely a key part of our current community and personal life. It's coming to industry.
Hey there, everybody. Future Tavis here. Well, future compared to the one that you just watched in the episode, but either way, I know we mentioned this would be a 2-parter episode, but we decided that it got a little bit too long and a little bit too interesting, so we decided to split them up. That way, get your focus, your full attention, and we learn the most from it. So that is the end of this episode on gamification. Of course, always be sure to check out Jeffrey's network, his book, his custom course that'll get you all caught up on even more than we've talked about in this series. And then in about 2 weeks, you'll have a new episode, the 3D printing portion. And let me tell you, you want to subscribe because the implications for not only the industry, but supply chains throughout the world, astounding. So, of course, subscribe to our network as well. And hey, until we see you next time, take care, everybody.